In this lesson, we will talk about loops. Loop is a mechanism in a programming language when you can repeat a certain operation multiple times based on the condition. There are different types of the loops exist in the JavaScript. We will talk about few of them that will be used later in the class. So I will show you a few types of loops, how to create the condition for the loops, and we will write first loops together. So let's get into it. For example, we want to type 5 times the message hello world into the console, right? So one way of doing this is just simply repeating our code 5 times hello world. And if I just copy it 5 times and run it, we see that this message was printed 5 times, but this is of course not the optimal way to do. And this is why the loops were created. So how to create the loop? Here is the basic syntax for the loop. And we will not talk about all different options for the loops in JavaScript. We will discuss only the most popular one that we will use later on. So the most basic syntax for a loop is this one. It starts with for keyword, and inside of the parentheses we define the condition. We need to declare a statement 1 divide semicolon, statement 2 divide by semicolon, and statement 3. Okay, and then curly brace. So what those statements? Statement 1 is our initial statement, what we want to stop the loop with. Statement 2 will define the condition of how long do we want to run our loop and when we want to stop our loop. So this is a condition of stopping point for the loop to complete the execution. And statement 3 will define is what do we need to do after each cycle of the loop. So that's the basic rule. So let's create right now the for loop for the hello world to print it 5 more times. I'll comment this out. And by the way, this one is called just for loop, or also it's called for I loop. So we start with keyword for, then we need to declare our initial statement. We just create a new variable I and assign the value 0. We will start our loop with 0. Then we need to provide a second statement is how long do we want to run this loop and when we want to stop it. And I will say that I want to run this loop until I is less than 5. And the third statement is what we need to do after each cycle is completed. So I want to increase I by 1 every time the loop is completed. So I can do something like I equals to I plus 1. And this is the loop is configured. Also, this statement can be replaced with more simple structure, which will be I plus plus, which will do pretty much the same thing. After each loop cycle, the value for the I variable will be increased by 1. And inside of our loop, we simply put the statement that we want to print, which is hello world. And this code will be executed 5 times. So let me run it and validate that it's actually working. And here we go, it's working exactly the same. So we have printed 5 times hello world, and we have just 3 lines of code instead of 5 lines of code. Is more optimal way. But how do I know that this loop is actually working? You can easily debug it. So I can use this index and print it out to the console as well. So just using concatenation, and I do hello world plus I, and we will see that value for this variable will be printed every time with the loop completed inside of the cycle. Executed, and here we go. We see hello world 0, hello world 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we don't see hello world 5 because our loop stopped. Once the I was 5, we reach this condition and we stop the execution. So this structure is very simple and the most popular and useful when you need to repeat a certain operation several times. So let me show you another example of the loops. Let's say that we have a list of certain items. Let's take our cars from the previous lesson. We have the list of 3 cars, Volvo, Toyota, and Tesla. And we want to loop through the list of those items and print each of the item one by one to the console. How to do that? For that, we have another for loop structure. It's called for of loop. And here is how to do this. We also use for keyword, and inside of the condition, we create new variable and create a new iterator. We can give any name to our iterator. And let's say I name it car, right? And car of cars. And this is the loop body and cars. Okay, so our variable is cars. Cars is our array, and we defined this condition. So one more time, car is the variable that will be our iterator, and this variable will hold for us value from the array during each iteration of the cycle. First value will be Volvo, then this variable will hold value Toyota, then this variable will hold value Tesla, and then loop will be completed. So, and this is how it works. So I print console log, console.log, and I just simply print out to the console our variable. And if I run this code right now, we see that 3 values were printed: Volvo, Toyota, and Tesla. And as I mentioned before, you can give any name. Let's say we can call it just C. Let C of cars. And if we run this, it's going to work absolutely the same way. So it's just our iterator, and for our convenience, we can give any name. So I name it as a car because this variable will hold the value of the car in the array of cars. So let's imagine that we want to interrupt our loop during the execution. So let's say we're looking just the value of Toyota inside of the loop, and once we find this value, we don't want to continue the loop. How to do that? Inside of this, we can add a condition that we learned before, and we say something like if car equals to Toyota, we want to break the loop. And if I run this code right now, we see that only 2 values were printed, Volvo and Toyota. Tesla was not printed because we broke the loop. We stopped the loop technically. And I want to show you one more kind of syntax that's often used in JavaScript for the for loops. So this is considered a more classical ES5 syntax. And this is example with ES6 syntax for each loop. And the structure would be like this. So first we provide the name of our array, which is cars, then dot, and then we have a method called for each. Then parentheses, then inside of the for each we provide our iterator, and iterator will be a car. Then the syntax is this: fat arrow syntax and curly braces. Here we go. And then the rest works exactly the same as in the loop above. Control C, Control V, and we can run this code, and we see that Volvo, Toyota, and Tesla were printed. So this is more compact way of writing the same version of this code, and syntax is just slightly different. And you need to use this for each method in JavaScript. So that's it. Let's quickly summarize what we did in this lesson. So for loops is the structure in the code that you can use if you want to repeat certain operation several times. The most classical approach is using for I loop, which has 3 statements: initial statement, condition, how long do we want to run this loop, and what we need to do after each loop cycle. For arrays, the best way to use a for of loop when you use the iterator and iterating through the list of the array. And another way of looping through the arrays is ES JavaScript syntax, using for each method and then using a fat arrow syntax, accessing your iterator and working with it. All right, thank you guys, and see you in the next lesson.